Okay, having the mute not on would be really beneficial. I didn't, which is why I'm recording now without the mute on. Because I do not want a repeat of last time. Yeah, a little traumatized from last time. Not wearing falsies today because... Thanks, Car. Because forget that. Real quick before we get started, I was considering playing some games. Not like hard games or anything, but like, you know, little indie games and things that I find on this channel. So let me know what you think. If that doesn't interest you, please let me know. And if it does, let me know. Shall we get on with the video? This light always makes me look so super washed out, like look like a ghost. But if I go any not whiter, I think you're gonna see the green screen. Watch, I'm gonna shift lights. This is the blue, which does weird things. And then this is the gold, which, oh, look, there's the green screen. And there's my happy middle. What do you do? This episode always starts off like a horror movie, and it kind of makes me laugh a little, because... Utena, what are you doing? But here we are. I should note that this episode is kind of a silly episode. Funny because, you know, it starts out like a horror movie, but... Shing! Nothing. This episode exists to show you kind of the true character behind people again. It's not a super serious for an overarching plot, but just things you might need to know for later plot. The show would be so different if Nanami had died right there. Namine. Take care, Miss Nanami. Also, I swear that shadow is totally misleading. So here we have the siblings and a half.
これが初めてじゃないです。植木鉢が落ちてきたり、材木が倒れてきたり、階段から突き落とされそうになったり。強いな、ハク。助けてお兄様。これはきっとスタイルが良くて可愛くて。
Nanami and Toga's relationship is complex. Toga doesn't believe, like, a thing she says. Doesn't really care. She just sits on the table. I don't know why Miki was hanging out with them, actually. He just was. He's just hanging out with everyone in these episodes. Maybe it's because everyone likes him. Miki says relationships between siblings is so complex. When he has the complex relationship with his sibling. Actually, it's probably pretty poignant that he said that. So she's convinced. Ooch. Ooh. Oh, Utena. Oof. Of course, now she's convinced that Utena's trying to kill her, because someone is trying to kill her, right? Oh my god, Nanami, stop. Okay, Of course Nanami thinks Utena's trying to kill her, and Utena is like, please, I have better things to be doing with my time. The only reason we see her do baseball is so that we know she's not like the other girls. Of course Miki's the first person to notice there's something going on with the rose garden. Taped up, keep outside. This conversation. Oh my god. Let imaginations run wild. This is what happens. Conspiracy theories left and right. So now, of course, Nanami's gonna think that Toga and Anchi are plotting her death. So they can be together? Okay, now she's sure that her brother's trying to kill her. The red rose between them. She's got one hell of an imagination. Oh, look at all the yellow and red roses. Colors, you know. Oh my god. And now Utena's jumping on the bandwagon of how could you kill your own sister? What on? Who thinks that right away? Who jumps to that conclusion? Of course they're talking about bugs. They're in a green... Okay. My brother wants me dead. I wish I were dead. Oh wait, until something scary happens. And then I wish I was dead less. Don't ask me how a horse got in the building. Or why they have a horse on campus to begin with. I have a lot of questions about the animals. Where'd those chickens come from? Why are they in the building? What's going on? I'm sure it means something. You know, chicken, egg, you gotta break a few eggs to make an omelet. Gotta crack the world shell. Chicken. I don't... So we met her savior. Again, the shadow I swear is misleading. His name is Subaoki. You'll be hearing it a lot. Okay, so even though this is a silly episode, every now and then they show you something that's kind of important, and it relates to other things. So this bandaged hand is gonna sound dumb, but it shows up multiple times, and it's not just her hand, it's other people's hand. The bandage is kind of showing two people being tied together, like two things tied together. So it shows up again and again throughout the series. In this way in particular, we see it between Nanami and her prince, the guy who rescued her. We'll see that play over in other situations. Goodbye. Goodbye. 名前も告げずに立ち去るなんざいかす。しかし、ナナミ君のお眼鏡にかなう王子様なんてこの学園にいるはずないと思ってたんですけどね。Yeah. This is where we learn more about why Nanami is the way she is. あれが彼女の王子様？ナナミ君、やはり年上好みだったのか。I mean, she does. Sort of. なんだ、違うのか。あ、ナナミ君渋い。 These two are stalkers. I don't know why they're stalking her. They just want to see what prince saved her, and so they just choose to stalk her instead of ask her, because that's what normal people do. Oh. Bum bum bum. He is a grade schooler. See, that shadow is entirely misleading, which will make you think that other shadow memories might be misleading. Oh my god. Shadow Playgirls. I love that sound. Okay, just pausing there really quick. This one isn't so hard. You could probably figure it out on your own, but it's essentially about expectations versus reality. You have these really big expectations and like what you think's going to happen, and then when reality is significantly worse than these expectations, you just kind of force yourself to believe it's still good. And really, it's a metaphor for a lot of different people and things. Also, there's, you know, the little bit of the puppets at the end, like the Shadow Playgirls have puppets of their own, and that again has to do with like puppeting others and getting them to believe the same expectations you had of reality, or your same vision of reality that may or may not be true. So there's that, and that was pretty easy. Back to the eye catch. Fun fact, I used to have that as my ringtone. Can I just say, I love that these two hang out. Yeah, she does. Mm-hmm. Parsley. Okay, let me talk about this conversation for a minute, because it seems kind of random, but it in the long term makes sense, I promise. So Utena's worried about Nanami, because Nanami is now like saying she's going to date this grade schooler, which is ridiculous to begin with, and everyone knows it. And then Miki's trying to explain, no, she's just doing this to get her older brother's attention because she has a brother complex, blah, 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 blah. He's a little bit smarter than this. He can see kind of through what she's doing. But the whole point of this conversation has to do with misunderstandings. So it starts with he, you know, answers a question that she obviously gave him before we cut over to them about like, oh, you know, I'm worried or something. And he's like, I don't know why, the lunch tastes good. And she's like, no, I'm talking about Nanami. And then partway through the conversation, he's like, oh, this might be bad. And she's like, I don't know, this food tastes good. Again, it's about misconceptions and just barely missing each other on things in conversations. The parsley cracks me up because it's just like one of those, it's useless. It's just a garnish. It's not there for anything other than to be pretty. And that's just a metaphor for people. And how Nanami sees them, obviously. Miki is very much done with this nonsense, but he still follows because reasons. It's a pretty random insight on a character in a really silly episode for no reason. Just, here's what Nanami's really like. This is why she's doing the things she does, and la 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 la. I think it's funny. She thinks her brother betrayed her. Yep. There they are. Yes, they do. Don't they? The bells start?
だって私テニスウェア持ってきてないわつわぶき
Up.
テニスウェアでございます
And now we're gonna see the reality of the situation.
ルール無用って感じねつわぶき
Nanami cares
虎の巻でございます
this much about the rules.
今日の美術屋外スケッチだって私イーゼル持ってきてないつわぶき明日のお弁当はミートボール入れてきてねはい喜んで
And he makes her food for her.
ああいうの彼って
I need one of those.
どんなに虐げられようとも
Oh, hi, Sayonja. Long time no see.
それもまた愛の形。愛には様々な形がある。ちなみに僕とアンシーの愛は忍ぶ愛。
This pause.
忍ぶ愛。
Nobody cares.
ねえこれ鈴木くんに頼ま
Okay. Sayonja's... I don't know. I like him as a character. I'd hate him as a person. But I find that whole thing interesting because he's making a commentary on the situation, but it's not quite what you might think it is. So coming out of nowhere, talking about Nanami's relationship with Tsubaki, and he talks about it being abusive, which is interesting coming from him, but more interesting than that is that in spite of the fact that he's like referencing, you know, Anshi with his exchange journal and things like that, that's not actually who he's talking about. It's kind of a redirect for the person that he's actually talking about in regards to having a weird wonky relationship with someone. I swear I'm not making it up. I only know this because the bandage thing happens again later, specifically to Sayonja. So he ends up kind of in Nanami's position. And that means a lot metaphorically when you see the rest of this episode. I just think it's really interesting, you know, being bandaged by the person who hurt you. Oh, did I say too much? Anyway, back to this.
れたんだけどねえ山田くんが読んでほしいってねえ田中くんが捨てといて
Oh my god, I almost forgot about these three.
山田です。田中です。どういうつもりだ、ななみくん。
They're her boy lackeys. And boy are they tragic.
僕たち中等部男子への当てつけ。
あなたたち誰
They literally write her love letters every day, and she doesn't even know who they are.
つわぶき
And then she just throws this child at them.
ななみくんと交際するなんて許せない。ここで白黒つけようじゃない。
僕は約束したんです。交際する以上はななみさんを守り抜くと。つわぶき、あとは頼んだわよ。
So she leaves because she doesn't particularly care.
そりゃ
She's also not paying attention because again, she doesn't care. Sounds familiar, right? Interesting how it's a brother-sister relationship and how much that sounds familiar. Anyway. Oh yeah, he's dead. No, I'm kidding. That whole scene was just to show you that he will absolutely throw himself on the sword for Nanami. Literally and metaphorically. And of course Utena thinks this is BS. Because it is.
君を守ろうと必死で戦っていたんだぞ。なのに黙って見ているだけなんて、そんなの本当の交際じゃない。君はボディーガード代わりにつわぶきくんを利用しているだけじゃないか。
Calling it like it is.
私は殺されかけたのよ。今までずっと慕ってきた実の兄に。
Nanami.
この気持ちがあなたに分かって。ななみくん、それは君の誤解。5回も10回もないわ。
Shut up, Mickey. You in the back with the logic.
どう扱おうと私の自由なはずよ。
So up until this point, we're under this impression that this poor kid just wants to be around her and has, you know, protected her and has been her lackey, and she treats him like garbage. And now he's going to talk about the first time they actually met. Same school. I don't know why there's a bull loose in the school. Why are these animals at the school to begin with? I don't. Oh, baby Nanami. Baby Spooky. So cute. And then Toga just comes out of nowhere and...
大丈夫かいナナミ
They're kind of setting up this whole... Is he a prince? He might be a prince. Look how he saves people. Just like a prince. And this kid now kind of turns and has the Utena syndrome of wanting to be cool like the prince. It's contagious. It's just, there's so many parallels. Parallels everywhere.
だけどナナミさんは僕のことを覚えていなかった。思い出してもらえるように出会いを演出したのに。演出
Rehearsed meeting?
もう一度危ない目に遭わせるしか。ちょっと待って。
Oh my god, this boy has so many problems.
植木鉢落としたり、材木倒したり、階段から突き落としたりしていたのって君？はい、危機一髪で駆けつける。それがお兄様の正しい姿ですから。
Crazy. So now we can very clearly see the person who is manipulating the entire situation is less Nanami and more Suaoki, even though it seems the other way around.
子供のしたことなんだから。そうそう、若気の至り思い余ってってやつだよ。
Nanami's huge on overkill, by the way.
お前のせいで私はお兄様をバカ呼ばわりしてしまったのよ。
暴れカンガルーだ。暴れカンガルーが出たぞ。
I'm sure these animals symbolize something. It hurts my brain to look it up. The kangaroo probably means something. The pugilist theme means something. Again, he would throw himself on the sword for her. Or, you know, in the way of a punching kangaroo. I don't know where these schools are getting these animals. Something really wrong here. Utena tries. And fails. I like the noise they use. for the kangaroo. Still trying. And then he got boxing gloves from somewhere.
お兄様はお兄様、つわぶきはつわぶきよ。こんなことであなたが死んでも私泣いてあげないからね。なぜって？それはね、つわぶき。あなたは私の大切なしもべ。こんなことで壊すわけにはいかないのよ。
Okay. I really like that scene because it shows a different side of Nanami's personality. So far, we see that she's a manipulator. She's, you know, just kind of a terrible person who uses people. And while that's kind of true, I mean, it's mostly true, she does have another side to her that is willing to protect someone. And she, you know, covers that up with I'm only, you know, making sure you don't get killed because I need someone to take care of me. I need someone to serve me. But... is that really so? Just more in-depth looks at Nanami, who often comes across as just a one-dimensional character who just has a brother complex and wants to smash anyone who gets, I mean, not smash, it's not the word I meant, wants to just crush anyone who gets too close to her brother, which is a lot of people? I don't know. But really, who brought a kangaroo here? Toga, what the And he just now shows up in the nick of time to save the day? Isn't he a prince? Or a pugilist. The vaguely a heart around him.
お兄様来てくれたんですね。
少々いたずらが過ぎるな、ナナミ。
ウテナ様、バラへの外注退治終わりました。
温室が立ち入り禁止になっていたのも、殺すの殺さないのの話も、全部虫の話だったんだよ。
お兄様。
Sabauki helping Toga out?
スワズキ。はい。わかりましょう。
Trying to be like his prince?
はい。
Do his prince?
ナナミさんのうちの養子になります。お兄様はダメでも。
They've broken up because they were dating. And now he wants to be her little brother. But of course she says, Big brother, you're the only one for me, as in like, that's the only person she'll recognize.
桐生トウがやっぱりただものじゃない。
He knows exactly what he's doing. Continue. Alright. It's a silly kind of filler episode. But even in the filler episodes, we are shown bits and pieces of other things that come later. Like the bandage is kind of important and symbolic, and that comes up later in the series and for a different relationship. We see the Nanami seeing through everybody else but having her own issues at the same time, so like she getting caught up in her own issues and not being able to necessarily fully express herself as to what's going wrong in this whole place. She knows something's up. And then we have the manipulative relationship where they lead us to believe that she's the manipulative one in the and the most abusive one in that relationship. And while she does use him outright, she also is very open about it and very like whatever. Versus him, who actually put her life in danger in order to save her so that he could look a certain way. Gonna say there are more people in this series like that than you may think, or a lot more, and Zabauki is just a tiny example. And then Sayonji, that long pause cracks me up so hard. I don't even no one cares, Sayonji. Really, no one cares. Like, whatever. Anyway, the exchange journal, there'll be a whole thing about that later in another episode. I think in the next season? Maybe it's at the end of the season. Might be at the end of the season. Next episode's going to be Jury's episode, which I'm very excited for because I love Jury. And that's going to be about it. So I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye!